Sports. We're only 15 days away from the draft. We have seen some unexpected things happen over the last month or so. Some trades that maybe turned the NFL upside down. Antonio Brown to the Raiders, Odell Beckham Jr. to the Browns. And former Jaguars and Raiders coach Jack Del Rio threw something out there the other day that provides a door number 3 to the Russell Wilson situation in Seattle, because we had assumed the options were, 1, you sign him to a long-term deal before his deadline of April 15. 2, if you don't, he's going to go year to year under the franchise tag, at least into 2020, maybe beyond. But now there's number 3. And Jack Del Rio, appearing on NFL Network, said, don't be surprised if, before it's all said and done, when we line up for the season next year, meaning this year, if Russell Wilson isn't quarterbacking somewhere else and the Seahawks haven't gone and gotten a quarterback they think for the future. I was stunned by that one because I don't think Jack Del Rio is going to go on TV and say that if he hasn't heard it from somebody he trusts. And there must be something out there, something that's getting started. And I think back to the rumors that were being mongered by Colin Cowherd about a trade to the Giants because Russell Wilson's wife, Sierra, doesn't like living in Seattle and she wants to be in more of a media capital because she's got a singing career. This thing gradually, slowly, but almost inevitably is taking on a life of its own. And I take what Del Rio said seriously, and I'm going to start paying attention now to whether or not that becomes a thing, the possibility of the Seahawks trading Russell Wilson instead of making him the highest paid player in the NFL or playing that Kirk Cousins franchise tag dance.
Well, I mean, no question am I paying attention to this from now. First of all, yes, ex-NFL coaches, they just don't make these kind of statements unless they've been told this by somebody. So, again, Jack Del Rio is not trying to break into the NFL breaking news business. I think this is something that he has heard. And let me just say, let's connect the dots a little bit, right? Who was Jack Del Rio's defensive coordinator when he was with the Oakland Raiders? Ken Norton Jr. Where did he come from? Seattle. Where is he now? I believe he's back in Seattle. Am I correct with that? I should have looked that up before I started saying that part of it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Del Rio fired him, too, so I don't know whether Ken Norton's returning Del Rio's calls.
Sure.
Maybe they get along fine.
Well, maybe they get along. You're right. But all I know is there's probably somebody he knows up on that staff. That's all I'm trying to kind of make the point of. At least that's where my brain goes at first. But there seems to be a lot of weird things about this Russell Wilson Seattle Seahawks thing. First off, just from the base level of football, Russell Wilson we know is awesome. But also, the Seattle Seahawks are the type of team that I've always looked at, and we've kind of dabbled in this conversation where the last few weeks I've always said, who is going to be the first team that has the guts to move on from a big-time franchise quarterback and say, okay, we're going to restart at square one with a young quarterback and build our team around depth and great players and have a quarterback on the rookie salary cap option still. And that's how the Seattle Seahawks dynasty was built, or not dynasty, but their great playoff run. I mean, Russell Wilson was on a rookie quarterback contract. He was a third-round pick, and they had an unbelievable team, deep defensive line, awesome offensive line, running backs, corners. They had it all. So from that aspect, I do look at Seattle as one of the teams they're probably going, we won that way once. Could we do it again? But then you mentioned, Mike, I mean, the rumors about the New York Giants, Sierra not being happy and wants to go to a big market. Stuff like that, in my experience, that just doesn't just come out of thin air. Usually there's been some talk or some type of conversation added to the fact of the weird contract talk dynamics and all of that added into it as well. So, yeah, to me, on like a topical level, it looks like both sides maybe are not afraid to make a move here, but I don't know that. It's purely speculative at this point.
When Russell Wilson was on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon last month, and we focused on the question from Fallon about possibly being the highest paid player in the NFL, the answer by Wilson, there's a great potential for that. That same interview also included a question for Wilson about the rumors of being traded to the Giants, and he said, I don't think the Seahawks are going to let me go. Well, if they change their mind, then there's 31 different franchises out there that to some degree or another may be interested in Russell Wilson. Now, the teams that have young ascending franchise quarterbacks aren't going to give it a second thought, like the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes and the Browns with Baker Mayfield. But, Chris, you look around the landscape of the NFL right now, Are there teams that jump out to you? And let's start with the Giants. Would it make sense for the Giants to make a play? Would you give up picks number 6 and 17 in round 1 for Russell Wilson right now if you were the Giants?
Pick 6 and 17 for Russell Wilson right now. I don't know if I could do both. Yeah, I would certainly think about it. Let's just say that. And I didn't expect you to ask me that question. But 6 and 17 for a team like the New York Giants, I think that's probably a little too rich with all the holes they have, added to the fact that you're going to have to pay him to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the history of football. So I would say no, that's maybe a little too much. But maybe one of those picks packaged with something else, then I would think about it if I'm the New York Giants. The other thing you got to take into play here, and especially if this happened between now and the draft, is, okay, if they do that, what are the Giants going to do? They just going to have Russell Wilson and Eli Manning together on the same team, and what, Eli's just going to be the most expensive backup in football? I would just be interested to see how that whole dynamic worked out as well.
Yeah, they've already paid Eli Manning $5 million. They could, in theory, cut him. There's a no-trade clause in the contract. But look, you hit on the big impediment, because it's one thing to make the trade.
Yes.
It's another thing to make the player happy. Look at what the Bears had to do last year. Everything they gave up to get Khalil Mack, and they still paid him $23.5 million per year. And from Wilson's perspective, do you want to be traded?
Right.
Because if you get traded, you don't get market value. If you get traded, that's going to, if they give up 2 first-round picks to get you, that's less money they're going to have in mind to pay you. It's a combination. How much do we have to give up to get him? How much do we have to pay him? And the less you have to give up to get him, the more you're willing to pay him. And I think for Wilson, the better play is, if he decides he wants to go to another team, go year to year under the franchise tag until the Seahawks say, we're just not going to apply the franchise tag again. And that may come as soon as 2021, when it would be $36.4 million for one season. So I don't know that that's the right outcome for Wilson, unless you find a team that is willing to part with significant draft pick compensation and make him at least a $34 million a year player on his next contract.
Yeah, no, I get that. All those things have to be taken into account as far as if you want to get Russell Wilson and whatever that might be. I mean, hey, this is a big-time conversation we're having. We're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in football on a premier franchise, really, a franchise that's been extremely relevant, one of the best organizations in football over the last 7-8 years. And they're talking about, or we're hearing rumors about maybe Russell Wilson not being on their team. I mean, this would be one of the biggest trades in the history of football. I find it unlikely to happen between now and the draft. John Schneider and Pete Carroll seem like two that would have guts to make these type of moves. But man, I don't think it's going to happen this year, I guess is what I'm saying. I could see something happen at the end of this season, but it's still nonetheless very interesting that Jack Del Rio would go on TV and say something like that.
Let's do kind of a speed round here with teams that would be potentially interested in him right now this year if he's available. I still think it's more realistic for something that would be discussing in 2020, but let's say the Seahawks are motivated to just get out of this mess now,
okay,
this financial mess, and move on. Dolphins. Should the Dolphins make a play for him?
Oh, that would be, yes. Yes, they could make a play. Certainly have a great need. That would change around their roster, their outlook on their team altogether. Everything would be positive. Certainly. Go ahead.
Cincinnati Bengals, they would never pay him, but that's a team that, look, Andy Dalton, they're uncertain, and they want to take advantage of the final year of Dalton's contract to see if he can do the Zach Taylor offense. I mean, the Bengals are the one team I look at in the AFC North and say there should be interest, but I'm answering my own question here.
Yeah.
They're never going to pay him, so it never
and Sierra's
becomes a
not going to
possibility
Cincinnati.
There.
I mean, that's
right.
just not happening. There's no way. I just don't see that happening. So that would be shocking to me.
Well, and if we assume that his wife's geographic preferences are going to be a major factor here, that's going to knock out a lot of these teams that potentially would be interested. I think the top team, right, is either the Giants or the LA Chargers.
Hey,
now, what are you going to do with Phillip Rivers, right? But I think that it makes sense, and that's why I say next year would make even more sense, because it would be easier for the Chargers to make the switcheroo if they choose to do it, move on from Phillip Rivers, and at the same time bring in Russell Wilson. But there aren't a lot of obvious destinations if a trade were to happen now. I think it's something that we need to be watching for 2020. I just think it's going to be a hard challenge for a team to come up with what the Seahawks would want and to give Russell Wilson what he would want.
Yeah, no, I agree. I look at it as a 2020 type move as well, and think that there could be some more spots maybe that even open up, whether the Washington Redskins, what's that quarterback situation after the year? You mentioned the Chargers. I think that's a very good thought. Hey, the Oakland Raiders, we'll see how that goes this year with Derek Carr and company. They might be wanting a new quarterback. Who the hell knows what goes on there? But nonetheless, what you said, Mike, I mean, you mentioned two teams, and even though it seems far-fetched to us, the Giants and the Chargers, those are two teams that have also been linked to Josh Rosen trades as well. So they're obviously thinking about quarterback moves. I have no idea whether they've contacted Russell Wilson or the Seattle Seahawks or had any conversation about that. But we know those two teams are at least dabbling in the quarterback market and thinking about future moves.
Would you trade, if you were the Cardinals, the #1 overall pick for Russell Wilson?
Oh, gosh. No, I would not, because I would just go, I'm getting the new age Russell Wilson without having to trade anything away for him and Kyler Murray. So I would not if I was.
But how do you know? But you don't know if Kyler Murray's going to make it.
I know, but again, I look at it and we don't know. We don't know anything. You're exactly right. But you got to trust your evaluation. And a guy like Cliff Kingsbury who's seen him forever and said nothing but positive things. And then you got a lot of other issues with your team, let alone the rookie salary cap thing we've talked about to add into that. If I was the Cardinals, as awesome as I think Russell Wilson is, I would go, nope, we'll get the new age Kyler Murray and try to make him the next Russell Wilson.
Yeah, you're going to pay Kyler Murray over 4 years less than you're going to pay Russell Wilson in 1 year.
Right.
Much less than what you're going to pay Russell Wilson in 1 year. But, if you think of it in terms of, every time you use that draft pick, you are trading that pick for a player. And if Russell Wilson were in the draft pool right now with his financial requirements attached to him, where would he go, right? If you could draft Russell Wilson right now at age 30 with the salary he's going to want, what would his floor be? Let's say the Cardinals wouldn't take him at 1. They'd go with the cheaper and maybe every bit as good Kyler Murray. But how long does he linger in the green room in Nashville if he's available at age 30, at his current salary expectation, knowing you're going to have to pay him $34 million a year or more? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I would think he would he wouldn't linger long, I would think. I really wouldn't. I would think Kyler Murray would go off the board, and then it would be Russell Wilson next, even with the 30-year-old age next to him and the contract demands, because I think there's questions about all these quarterbacks that are in the first round to a degree to where nobody feels totally 100% warm and cozy. Oh, this guy is a slam dunk, superstar. I don't get the feeling like you got that with last year with certain teams' beliefs in Baker Mayfield or Josh Allen or Sam Darnold. I don't think that's going on the same way this year with Drew Lock, Dwayne Haskins, and Daniel Jones.
If I was the Giants, without question, I would pick up the phone and I would call Pete Carroll and/or John Schneider and say, let's try to work something out, without question. And I'd give up maybe 6 this year and the first-round pick next year, although the first-round pick next year could be higher than 17 this year. I would give 2 first-round picks for Russell Wilson, and I would pay him, because that would immediately restore the credibility of that franchise and allow the Giants to build around Russell Wilson into the future and maybe get to the playoffs more than once every 7 years.
Yeah,
I think that's if he's going to be traded this year, that's the one team.
That's the one team. You think it'll be the Giants that make a move or do it. Yeah, again, I don't think so. I think they're still going to go all in with Eli Manning for 1 year. But I do think the Giants are going to make a move for a quarterback. So, I just think it'll be the draft, though. I think that the New York Giants are going to take a quarterback in the draft. But that does make sense. I mean, with Russell Wilson and the New York Giants, I hear you. He will change around an organization in a hurry.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.